Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning in. And today I'm going to spend the next 60 minutes or so taking you through an overview, an introduction to social selling for the 21st century. As you move into 2021, hopefully they can give you some hints and tips around the sort of things you can think about around how you can build social and digital into pipeline generation, your revenue generation, setting new meetings, networking, and getting your content and your posts to work harder for you. Hope you enjoy. So let's get into this. How are we going to start moving into 2021 and how do you build social and digital into your social selling strategy that can then promote and support a remote selling, virtual selling, digital selling, modern selling perspective? And a lot of everything that we do and we look at working with organizations is actually we're focusing on shifting behaviors and mindsets. This isn't kind of social media training that maybe you're used to. It's around shifting those perceptions, that belief system, if you will, around achieving the same outcomes, which is ultimately revenue opportunity, revenue generation, business opportunity, setting sales meetings, whatever it is you're trying to achieve from an outcome perspective. But it's focusing on those inputs and that process to get to that same outcome, which is fundamentally changed. And social and digital is driving huge amounts of this, if not all of it. I remember being at a conference 2-3 years ago when somebody asked one of the speakers, how do you know when an organization has truly embraced digital transformation? Well, when you stop putting digital in front of everything, because it's just what we do. It's just baked into everything that we do. In the corporate world, certainly in the sales world, we're starting to see this shift, but this thing around social, my clients aren't on social media. Social media is a waste of time. I don't want my AEs, my sales reps, my lawyers, accountants, whomever, wasting their time on social. They should be out there making the calls, doing the dials to get the meetings. But this isn't an and/or conversation. This is how you can build this into what you're already doing on top of your existing pipeline creation. So a lot of what we do, our belief systems are around moving the organization at an individual team level from this fixed mindset to this growth mindset. So fixed mindset is typically, but we've always done it this way. There isn't another way of doing it. This is what I know, therefore this is all I'm going to do. And you'll all be familiar with the, we've always done it this way in terms of what that means. Things will never evolve and never change. So it's very much, I highly recommend reading this book, The Power of the Mindset by Carol Dweck. She wrote it in the late 90s. It's a brilliant book. And it's certainly, what Microsoft, Satya Nadella is building the culture over the last 4 or 5 years. He's been CEO in terms of this growth mindset mentality within the business of Microsoft, and you can see the effects and the impact that's now having on them as a business and as a brand from where they are to where they are now. And in terms of digital around the world, it can't be ignored. Simon Kemp, if you're not following him, highly recommend it. He releases this every quarter, and we're well beyond that kind of halfway point now. 53% of the world's population now uses social media. That translates into 2 out of 3 people that you want to talk to are going to be on social media in some shape or form. 60% of the world has now got access to the internet. Unique mobile phone users. The list goes on and on and on. So if you are not building social media as part of your communication strategy, your sales strategy, your business development and marketing strategy, your targeting strategy versus the competition are, especially in this current climate where we can't meet face to face, where sales conferences aren't there, you're missing out on a massive opportunity. And LinkedIn is, the latest count still sits at 706 million. I don't doubt that this will be a couple of months ago, that this will increase, no doubt, soon. It's the biggest B2B social media platform out there, in my view, biggest CRM system in the world, if you will. Microsoft paid $26 billion for them 4 or 5 years ago. And it's fascinating seeing how Microsoft is now building all of this data, their social data, LinkedIn data, into their wider ecosystem. So, for example, you can get a plugin for G Suite to look at LinkedIn profiles when they come in, if that same email address is the same they used to log in. And now with Outlook 365, if you're on cloud version of Outlook, you can get a LinkedIn plugin as well, so you get the same thing. So when somebody emails you, you can hover over the email address. If that is the email address they use to log into their LinkedIn profile, then you'll get a little kind of a mini version of their profile photo, and also, more importantly, their relationships, their network to you, which can be hugely useful in terms of a quick reminder of who else they're connected to that could help facilitate an introduction. So if you're not considering LinkedIn as a genuine bona fide lead generation tool or account-based marketing tool, you need to start shifting your thinking and your thought process around that. As of 2019, the last 3 years in a row, LinkedIn is the most trusted platform out there. I'm not really surprised by that. Even though Facebook is at the bottom of the pile, we do need to consider that Facebook is the largest used social media platform on the planet. It is close to 3 billion monthly active users across all its Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger. So it can't be discounted as a communication channel of sorts, depending on who your audience are and what sort of content you want to distribute across. But LinkedIn, remains there at the top, and not overly surprised by that. Pinterest is an interesting one. Pinterest has come kind of from nowhere, and if you're familiar with Pinterest, they're pinning pictures and ideas. There's a lot of business-to-business content on there, a lot of useful infographics, a lot of useful ideas and thought processes that have been visualized. So Pinterest, not necessarily using it to sell through, but certainly a useful resource tool to find interesting content that you may want to repurpose. What we need to consider as human beings is that even before moving into the world of this post-COVID world and what that might look like, is that we jump to conclusions. You jump to conclusions when you meet somebody for the first time in whatever that setting is. You jump to conclusions about what you can or cannot find about people online, and what impressions that kind of digital footprint is making, be that LinkedIn, be that website, be that when someone puts your name into Google, what comes up on page 1, page 2, images, videos, any kind of anything that's related to you that could sway their immediate viewpoint of you one way or the other. And I find myself having to kind of snap myself out of this when I look at profile photos, and I find myself making decisions on whether I'm going to bother looking at someone's profile further based on their photo, in terms of the pose, the camera angle, the lighting, black and white, color. Is somebody else in the photo with them? Now I force myself to step out of that thought process, and of course give somebody the benefit of the doubt. But this is the challenge of this economy of now that we live in, is that sometimes people do make snap judgments. And so what we need to consider is, if you are doing that, so if you just put yourself in your shoes at the moment, you're scanning LinkedIn profiles, you're going through, and you're making yes/no decisions pretty quickly. Well, exactly the same thing is happening to you in terms of what people think about you around that first impression. And the first impression is your LinkedIn profile. So there's some basic things that we need to consider in terms of your LinkedIn profile that you need to have in place, which we can walk through now, for example. So when looking at your profile, some things to consider. Want to make sure you've got a banner image up there. By all means, go for the branded route. If you're a solopreneur, you can have your website, you can have contact details up there. Large organizations, speak to marketing, see what they can help with. But if you haven't, this will rotate to varying different colors, which is a recent update that LinkedIn have made. Just talked about profile photos, but good up-to-date profile photo in terms of kind of how you would want to be represented when somebody meets you for the first time face-to-face. This little speaker is a relatively new addition. It means you can add a 10-second audio clip to your profile, which is designed if you've got a difficult name to pronounce. But some people, I use it as a way to introduce myself. So thank you for looking at my profile, taking the time to look at my profile. It'd be great to connect if you want to learn more. That can only be done in the mobile version of the profile. So what you need to do in the mobile device, so you need to tap on your picture top left up here in mobile. You then come to here, which is view profile. Then you click on this pencil here. This opens up this edit page here, and then your audio recording. So you record the audio here on your mobile device, and then that will sit on your profile. You can listen to it on the profile. When you click this here, it will play it back. But it's certainly if you're a difficult name to pronounce, it's well worth it. But I use it as a way, 10-second introduction, if you will. Then the headline. This is never actually meant to be your job title. We're obsessed with forcing our hierarchies on people, and certainly from a sales perspective, people don't want to be sold to. So you don't necessarily want to have sales director, sales manager, account executive, SDR, BDR, what have you. Ideally, you want to have introduced what it is that you do. So in an ideal world, it's this is what I do: revenue generation through social, digital, and data. you need to consider, if I were to pick up the phone to any of your clients, how would they describe what you do for them to me? That's what we want to try and elicit. Then the about section, this can be played all sorts of different ways. I play around this every couple of months. I'm taking a quasi kind of CV-led approach, but more in terms of trying to say what you will get by working with me. Other people take a more personal approach. They can tell a bit of a story. They put some insights in terms of football teams they support, or soccer teams, or if they do mountain biking, road cycling, if you charity work, board of governors, board of directors, all of this can go in here, because what this wants to try and do is to try and sort of bring out, okay, you're not just another person on LinkedIn. And certainly the personal approach in terms of being a parent, or I said the sporting things that you may be interested in, starts to create a bit of a human connection. I also enjoy doing that. So does this person. Therefore, we have something in common. Your featured section, this is a great way to promote content. So if this isn't turned on, you can come back up here and go to add profile section and then just add featured. And then what you can do, you can add links to posts, you can add links to YouTube channels, etc., and they're all clickable. So you just literally add what you want in there. So it's a great way to promote your content through there. Then we come through to the experience section. This is more of the what. So this is what we're going to, a pitch CV, a pitch deck. This is the what I do, or your team does, or your solution does. So the problem that it solves, the outcomes and the problems that it solves for you. That's what we need to kind of have in here. Yes, you can add links to varying pieces and so on. The key thing you also want to consider, if you're familiar with search engine optimization, you want to make sure that throughout the experience section, actually throughout your entire profile, everywhere can be searched, is the keywords for what you do, so that will then be searched on LinkedIn. What you need to consider from a search engine optimization perspective is, work with your marketing team and then make sure we get these keywords here that are searchable. Then as you move through, build your profile out as wide as you can, the more we have in there. So, in terms of you do podcasting, mentoring work, anything with your members of societies, add that all in. So that builds that and tells that story. Education is important, because that can help the system go, hey, these people studied this establishment, so do these people. You may want to connect with them. I sometimes use this as a route in to get referrals. Hi, I know we studied at the same university. I know that you don't know me, but can you help? Licenses, certifications, publications, add this all through. All helps. I've had people pick up on this in terms of make reference to skiing and sailing. Skills are important, not the endorsements, because they're not so important unless you're actually looking for a role. But then I've had 64 people endorse me for strategy, but some of those people that I don't even know. But the key thing in this is these skills are all searchable. So when people are searching social media marketing, I will appear in that search. The same with CRM and all related stuff. You can add up to 50 skills on your profile, so it's worth doing. And then as we come through, for me, recommendations, I believe, are a bit like the Amazon 5-star rating. I use my profile as a pitch document. By all means, go to the bottom of my profile, look at the recommendations that I've got, and feel free to reach out to those people if you want to learn more. So highly recommend, not from this perspective, recommendations from your clients, not from your peers or people that you work with. So people you've actually delivered work for. Get them to give you a recommendation. Other things to consider back up here at the top is your public profile and URL. So this is how visible you are off LinkedIn. So I have myself completely and utterly visible, so that I can be seen by everybody. The more private you make yourself as you move up here, especially if you haven't got premium, then the less you get back from LinkedIn. And the other thing to consider is personalizing your URL. So up here is where you see I've got Alexander Lowe. If you haven't personalized your URL, if you look up here, you'll have first name, hyphen, surname, hyphen, and a bunch of numbers. So it doesn't really, just makes it look like this is your own kind of professional, personal website, if you will. So I recommend doing that. So if you can't get your first name and hyphen surname, take the hyphen out. If you can't get that, flip your name. But the key thing is try and get this so it looks like a website that is unique to you. Another thing that you may want to also consider is profile views are also viewed. So if you are looking at my LinkedIn profile, you will notice that there is no one that's appearing down the side in terms of people also viewed. I have that turned off because I don't necessarily want people looking at other profiles. When they land on my profile, I want to focus them specifically on my profile. So if you want to make sure you're not encouraging someone else to look at your profile, views of this profile also viewed. If you turn that to no, what that means, when somebody lands on your profile, there won't be a list of other LinkedIn profiles down the side, which you can't control. It could be people you don't want to be associated with. It could be competitors and so on. So that's a quick overview in terms of consideration for your profile. At the end of the day, just to be absolutely crystal clear here, you're not going to win or lose business because of an amazing LinkedIn profile, but it is creating that first impression. And this is fundamentally what we need to consider, is that it's when you're not in the room. And at the moment, here we are, almost November 2020, in this strange COVID-19 world that we find ourselves, and we can't have those face-to-face meetings. We can't leave the room. Your digital presence is going to become ever more critical. So what's actually changed then? If we're focusing on kind of the next kind of steps around all of this, what has changed, if anything? And from my perspective, I was focused on outcomes. So if I roll back the clock 20 years ago when I was in my recruitment days, what was I trying to do? I was trying to generate business meetings. I was trying to generate leads. I was trying to generate conversations with sales directors and HR directors with a view to sell why they should work with me and Michael Page International to get the best sales recruits in the industry. How did I do that? Cold calls, pretty much all I could do. Smile and dial. LinkedIn was kind of around, but it was used as a CV shop more so than anything. Yeah, I did cold outreach on LinkedIn, but the primary method to get a conversation with people was cold calling and going through job adverts and calling those through. Let's fast forward to today. What are any of us trying to do in a sales environment? Generate business opportunity, generate opportunities and meetings and conversation with people, to turn that into a pitch, to turn that into a win and revenue. So outcomes haven't changed in 20 years. What have fundamentally transformed, though, is that process to get to that same outcome. So it's the digitization, if you want to use that word, of the sales process or the prospecting process to get to that same outcome, which is a business meeting. And it's some inputs that could well have changed, KPIs that may well need to change in order to drive the behaviors that you are looking for. So fundamentally, outcomes haven't changed at all. It's that process, the digitization process, to get to that same outcome, which we are focusing on here. There's an interesting piece from this, which is around customers and customer experience. And I think this is fascinating. As I move into 2021, I will come to this. This I believe is where we're going to start to see the winners and losers around all of this. Because if we think about every single touch point that an organization now has with you, primarily is going to be digital. And we base that on preconceived ideas of what good should be, because of the way that we interact with Amazon, because of the way we interact with Deliveroo, because of the way you interact with your bank. At the end of the day, I bank with NatWest, and their app is pretty damn good. I don't have to go into a physical store anymore. I didn't even before that go into a physical NatWest, NatWest bank, retail bank to do anything. And actually, the experience in the bank didn't match the experience that I had in the digital world, which was massively frustrating. So why does it just not work? And this is the thing around that Aldous Huxley quote around experience is not what happens to you, it's how you interpret what happens to you. Every single one of us are unique, and we all talk about putting ourselves in our customer's shoes, yet a few of us rarely genuinely do it. So what I want to consider is everything that you do at an individual level to a corporate level is driving that experience and that interpretation of that experience of you as a brand, as a person, as an individual. And this is Gartner research, and this is long, but this was out before COVID hit. This was, I think, last year. This came out in terms of the fact that digital can now play a point through the entire process. So just because, as Adamson says, online and offline begins, it doesn't mean online ends. And especially now in this environment where we can't have those face-to-face meetings as often as we used to, you can't go to those conferences. You can remain front of mind of your existing clients as well as your prospects, even when you're not actually communicating with them via phone or email or WhatsApp. The other key aspect to consider is this giving these customers an entry point on their own terms. No longer do we want to be dictated to when we should read something or do something, which is why email marketing still has its place, but it is reinventing, because an email goes in, it's a moment in time. And typically, if it's not dealt with there and then in the next couple of hours, it's probably never ever going to be dealt with, or never ever opened or even seen. The beauty with social, especially LinkedIn at the moment, LinkedIn's in a great place. Content hangs around for a long time on LinkedIn. It's not, it hangs around. You have much more shelf life with your content on LinkedIn than you do on other social media platforms. But if I want to read something at 3 a.m. because my 2-year-old is waking me up, I'll read it at 3 a.m. If I want to listen to something, I want to listen, read, watch things on my terms when I decide, rather than when I'm told to. And that's the key thing, is that your LinkedIn profile, actually every single employee, can be that digital entry point, because you're constantly just putting content out there and putting messaging out there that draws people to you to engage when they want to engage, versus when you tell them to engage. This is what we're trying to drive at, creating that entry point on their own terms. And again, you may have seen this from Gartner. This is the complexity of the internal buying process. Caveat: this was before COVID-19, so it may see slightly changing. But everywhere that you see blue is where digital impacts. So if you're not going back to that Aldous Huxley quote, especially in this current climate where it is primarily going to be, majority of the conversations are going to be digital, and some touch points are going to be digital in some shape or form. Yes, obviously we're going to have video calls and telephone calls and so on, but outside of that, it is all going to be driven by your digital and social presence. The easier it is you make people to access your white papers, your insights, whatever it is, the more likely they're going to lean towards you. Because think about in your own words, when it's just easy to do something, when something just works and it works well and it helps me achieve what I'm trying to do, even the simple things, then that's job done, that's job one. And it's all around being tech enabled. So you shouldn't be led by technology, being tech enabled to drive the best client experience possible for your intended audience. Again, put yourselves in their shoes. At the end of the day, every single person you are marketing to is a human being like you. They have good days, they have bad days. If they're parents, they'll have to manage that side of things. If they're managing teams, if they're reporting into senior leaders, you don't know what kind of good day, bad day they're having. But we all kind of assume that everybody is built on our own kind of preconceptions, rather than actually what's happening out there in the world. But fundamentally, we're all human beings, and typically we just want stuff to work, and it want it to work well. And when it doesn't, that's when we start to have the frustrations and things start to go awry. So, okay, well, that's all well and good, Alex. What does this actually mean? So let's think about how we can then start to bring this all to life. How do we actually start to, we've understood the concepts of your personal brand, if you will, that anchor point, that initial first impression that you're making. Now we want to start thinking about your network. And your network, historically, for those of us who remember the times before social media, before this world of digital, you had an address book, and you had a mix of people around contacts, champions, network, and so on. But of course, there are only so many hours in the day that one had to make phone calls and go and see people, because you had to eat and get some rest and actually do your day job. So the beauty with the world of digital, if you will, is that you can be present 24/7. You can have hundreds, if not thousands, of meetings on a daily basis, should you choose to. However, this only works if you have a relevant referral network. So what do I mean by that? So what we need to do is understand what our referral network of opportunity is. So if I look for Chief Technology Officer, which is Chief Information Officer, by the by, the job title is relevant. What I want to see is how many people I've got in my network. So I then click on People, and then I click on All Filters. And what I'm interested in is my second degree network. I may be in the United States, and then in the financial services space, to drill it down a bit. The reason I'm interested in my second degree network is that we know that referrals are the quickest route in. So in my own network, I can already get 2,000 referrals. So 2,000 referrals just by going into my network and going, Manish, how well do you know? Jose would love to have an introduction to him, or down here. So straight away, this goes to show that I've got a pretty large network which I could leverage, and that is the quickest route in. We're always looking for the quickest route in here. The other thing you need to consider is also this is your potential network of influence. We'll come into how the algorithm works in later on. But the key thing around all of this is that if I were to share a piece of content saying, if you're a CIO, read this, or the latest research impacting CIO shares this, my first degree network potentially likes or comments or engages with that, which means I can influence a possible further 2,000 people in my immediate network. So then could start to drive them to look at my my profile. And Todd, for example, could go, hey, I don't know Alex, but now I do know Alex, and look at who else Alex is connected to. Alex looks like somebody who operates in my space that could potentially help me. I might follow Alex. I might connect with Alex. But this would only work if I then have a large network. And there's a kind of this, the mixed side of things here is that then your network needs to be a blend of, yes, people you know, but you also need to consider the larger your network, the larger the network of opportunity you have to market through and sell through. So in terms of connect absolutely with every single business person that you've ever done business with, or had a business, in a business construct, business relationship, business conversation, because that's only a good thing. If people are sending you connection requests that you don't know them, but the crossover network looks sensible and there could be some benefit in that, then connect with them. Because what you need to understand is when you share a piece of content, the belief is that around 10% of your network, your first screen network, will see that content. So if your network is only 500 people, then only 50 people are going to see that, that potentially see that piece of content. If your network is 1,000 people, then 100 people, and so on. So actually, the larger the network of opportunity you have. Other things to also consider is that if somebody has gold next to their logo, then they are paying for LinkedIn, so they're more likely to use it. But let's say I want to get to Edward at Credit Card CIB in New York. So I can click on Edward's profile. I can then potentially get an introduction. I can see he's got 500 plus connections. So that kind of tells me that he is active on the system. I can go down to activity. I can then potentially start to network with Edward. So I can see what he's been engaging with. He shared this 3 weeks ago. So this was against hackers. Now let's say I'm in the cyberspace and I want to get his attention. So until this point, Edward has no idea I exist as a human being. So I, again, authentic, I'm going to like this, or I'm going to say insightful. What I've now done is just introduce myself to Edward. This is no different from him being at a conference, physical conference, and me going up and introducing myself to him at that conference. Putting my hand out, shaking his hand, or elbow bump, as new world that we're in, and introducing myself. Because he shared something onto social media. He has no idea how far and wide this has now gone. And of course, the other thing that happens is the 12 other people that have engaged with that also get a notification. So there could be some other people within that network which could be useful to me. So potentially AXA Group operations, Accenture security lead. That potentially tells you some insights into does Accenture work with them. So by doing that, I've now drawn him into my social proximity. I've now drawn him into my field of view. Also just double check if he's actually originated anything. When it does work, you can see what they've posted. So that's down here in the activity. Of course, go all the way down, see if there's any areas where there's a crossover in terms of maybe things you've worked at or clients you've worked with, your current clients. So maybe if you work with Boston Consulting Group, but he's now here, you say, hey, see your ex-BCG, we're currently working with BCG on something, it'd be great to have a conversation. So keep going through, have a look at the sort of things that maybe he's interested in, see some, he's given some recommendations, which is great, the whole way through. The other thing you can also do then, most people haven't turned this off. So if I were to do the like and the follow, that's not a connection, but I'm now following him, as you can do on Instagram and Twitter. He then also gets a notification up here that I've done that. So this is how you can start to network with people on LinkedIn without necessarily having to connect with them, and start to draw them into your field of view and draw them into starting a conversation, bit of repartee conversation, and get them to come to your profile and look at your profile, which then comes full circle as to why your profile needs to talk to your next client and not your next job, as it were. So that's something to consider in terms of networking. Go network with the people that you want to network with that are in your space. But it's that job title, then it's second degree, and then also you can drill it down if you want to in terms of the size that you want to get those lists down, and then just start to network and and engage as it were. So from a connection perspective, from my perspective, this is relatively straightforward in terms of what you want people to do. The bigger the network connection, the bigger the network you have, the bigger the network of opportunity. That's the way to think about it. When sending connection requests to people you don't know, if you can't get that referral, then in an ideal world, you want to personalize it with some reason as to why they should connect with you. But you'll a bit of humor here in terms of the sort of connection requests you get. So basically, you want to make sure that you are connecting with purpose and intention, but absolutely not selling. Do not sell. Do not pitch over LinkedIn. That is the big no. That comes later on. That comes in when you started a conversation, you built relationship, and then you go into the pitch. So what we now need to do is start thinking about how can we start to bring our network to life? How can I start to really start to move the needle around all of this and actually start these conversations? So what you need to consider is that your LinkedIn network, your social network is over here. It's this micro influencer. So pre-social, let's send out lots of content. Let's send out loads of emails, which nobody bothers reading, with the view to try and drilling that down to that one customer. The other way around, we're flipping this on its head. So each of your connections, this is a first-degree connection, is the top of this pyramid. So you connect vertically, you share some interesting content, they like or comment on it, and then potentially this moves into their network. They do the same, move into their network, and they're the same. And that's what we mean by sell through, market through the networks. In the space of 1, 2, 3, 4 clicks or pieces of engagement, you're moving your personal brand, you're moving that blog post, that invitation to a webinar, yourself into these new networks. Because obviously each time you drop down, the pyramid starts again. But of course, if you're not connecting to these people and you start to engage with content, all you're doing is just getting stuck in this echo chamber up here, which we don't want. It's around activating those micro influencers, which then comes full circle. If you're not curating, connecting to people on LinkedIn that you want to market through and leverage their networks, you're only hurting yourself versus those that are. And I'm not connected to John, but this is about 2 years old, this post now, but it's interesting in terms of this perceived thing around using email as a single channel of choice, is that yes, of course, email marketing has a place. And yes, of course, there are people out there who want to receive your emails, but there are also a huge audience out there who don't. So if you think about it, you've got first name dot surname just plowing into people's inboxes. And then all of a sudden, so that's just annoying them from a brand perspective because, this is not relevant, not interesting, they're not engaging with it. Then actually you have something meaningful to say, or someone in your team has something meaningful to say, but you are already on the back foot as a brand because just put yourselves in your client's shoes. Would you really open that email if I were you? If that was sent to my grandmother, would I want her to open it or see it? No, I probably wouldn't. Well, then don't send it. This then goes back to go to your marketing teams. And if anybody in marketing watching this, give the data to the sales team. Give the data to open rates and click-throughs. An interesting anecdote on this, an SDR shared a story of actually how they went to marketing and asked marketing for all the unsubscribes, the email unsubscribes, and they called every single one, and they generated 3 business opportunities from it. Because people were unsubscribing from the emails because they weren't interested in that particular piece of content, but they had no idea what else the organization could do or did do that could help them. So by picking up the phone and just asking the question, why did you unsubscribe? Well, I'm not interested in that. Okay, what are you interested in? Well, this, and this. Okay, well, funny enough, we do that. Should we have a conversation around that? So as I said, not an and/or, but this happens day in, day out, and it does because it happens in your inboxes. So in order to change the conversation, you've got to be part of the narrative. In order to change the narrative, you've got to be part of the conversation. And this is certainly what LinkedIn is rewarding more and more. We are seeing likes and comments are your ticket. The more likes, the more comments, the more you engage, the more you trigger the system. But the key thing here is likes and comments with people that you don't know. Yes, of course you can do it with your existing network, and it's a great way to remain front of mind for your existing clients. So drop a quick like in there or quick comments in there in terms of just that reminder, keep front of your mind side of things. But then get into new networks, get out of the echo chamber of your kind of what you see on your newsfeed, and get out there and start looking at new networks and new conversations. You need to understand that everything you do on LinkedIn, everything you do on any social media platform, LinkedIn is no different, is driven by the algorithm and driven by what you do or don't do. So if you're sitting there thinking that your newsfeed looks crap or you haven't actually done anything to it, then of course the system is having to guess and gauge what it thinks you're going to find of interest. The other thing that you need to consider is also dwell time, which was updated in May of this year. It's well worth subscribing to the engineering blog if you don't, because at least you can keep up to date when they make changes. Dwell time is they're now starting to also look at how long somebody spends on a post, because they recognize that there's a huge proportion of LinkedIners who do not engage, but they do find content interesting, and we know they find it interesting because they spend a long time on a particular post reading it. They then start to consider your relationship to the author, any hashtags that are in there, and the type of content itself, and they go, well, maybe we should start to serve you more of this, because LinkedIn is like every other platform on the planet. It wants eyeballs, it wants engagement, so it can sell that to marketing teams. But you can start to get this to work for your work for yourself, which we'll come on to in a second. Now you start thinking about actually how you use your content. It's around telling a story. It's around getting your audience to think differently. That's an interesting angle. I haven't thought about it from that point of view. Well, those statistics don't necessarily add up to what I'm seeing. I might want to learn to find out more. That's what we want to start doing. You start to tell a story, a bit of a narrative, over and over everything else. And this isn't necessarily about writing War and Peace. This is around creating ideas, creating conversations, snippets of content, snippets of a piece of a research paper, a little statistic here and there, just to start to drip feed into the network, so you can start to maintain those conversations. That's what we want to be doing out here, and that's why it's about ideas and not necessarily about writing War and Peace. Long form content is good, don't get me wrong, but it's not necessarily good to be shared in its long form prose on social media. So things to then consider before we come into this around the algorithm and your newsfeed. So everything that you see here is based on your behavior to people. So profile views, likes, comments on things in the past. So everything you're seeing is based on what you are doing. So what LinkedIn wants to keep serving to you, because it goes, hey, we think you're going to find this interesting. Therefore, if you find this interesting, you will remain on LinkedIn. That's fundamentally what LinkedIn wants to do. So you can flick between recent and top. So recent is by quasi-chronological. It's chronological. Top is what it thinks you're going to find most interesting based on recent engagement. So if you start to see things, you think, okay, well then start trying to flip between the two. Then what you can do is you can unfollow people. So if you're seeing stuff, so this is because Helen's commented on this. I'd never do this because Helen shares amazing stuff, but I can unfollow Helen. So you can unfollow people on LinkedIn. So if you're seeing content from people on LinkedIn you're just not interested in, you don't think you'd like it, it's not for you, well, unfollow them. They don't know that you've done that, but all you're doing is starting to train the system to go, this is what I do want to see versus what I don't want to see. You'll start to see here, down here, add to your feed. So again, what LinkedIn is trying to do is recommend other news feeds to you based on what it thinks is going to be of interest to you. Over here, we can see in terms of what it's learning to try and personalize a feed to make it more relevant to you. So if I click on view recommendations, then this is the follow fresh perspective. So people and hashtags. So it could be there's some, if they got the blue by it, they're an influencer, but you can follow, basically, as you said, you can follow anybody on LinkedIn. But a good start of 10 could be, for example, following all the C-suite of your clients. Even if you never talk to them or engage with them, go follow the CEO, the CFO, and the CIO, or the equivalent. So you can start to keep up to speed in terms of what they're sharing and what they're doing. Could be, a good way to reach out to people. Hashtags. Hashtags are also news feeds in their own right. So if I go back to my page here, you'll see all the ones down here that I'm following. What this then does, if I look at content strategy, so this brings me an entirely new audience that I wouldn't normally see in my newsfeed. So 1.1 million followers, and then I can start to see different content that I wouldn't necessarily normally see within my newsfeed. We can get the same thing. Flip by top is going to be based on what it believes to be of interest to you. To then recent, so we can go into we see here posted 1 minute ago. But what this then also means is that network. So you can start to network with people in the areas of conversation that you'd be of interest. So here's an example. This Michelle, third plus. She'd never be in my newsfeed ever, but because she's used this hashtag and she shared this just now, what I can do is I can like it. And now I've introduced myself to Michelle. I'm also telling the system I want to see more Michelle stuff. So what you need to think about is the hashtags that are kind of industry leaders, industry specific to what you're doing. So if you sell into, I do hashtag pharmaceutical, for example. If that's the pharmaceutical industry, you said, you've got 1 million followers there, click follow. And then you're going to start to keep track of what people are talking about in the round, in the pharmaceutical, in the round. So you can follow lots of different hashtags to then find different newsfeeds. Doesn't mean your LinkedIn profile is going to be just full of this in terms of the main newsfeed. You have to move into those different conversations and start to network with people and start conversation, because when you do that, you'll then draw them directly into your field of view. And this is what we are, fundamentally looking to try and do. So start using those hashtags, and as I said, following people to understand influences that may be of interest to you. The other thing to consider is go and follow. I'm just using Goldman Sachs as an example. Go and follow all the company pages of your existing clients and the people you want to work for, the people that you want to prospect. Because what that then does, if I were to click follow, signal, but I can then start to see, maybe what's going on in their world, and then you can see what they're talking about. So this is Goldman Sachs' 10K small business program. You click on the 1, 2, 3, and then sometimes you get lots of other, so Goldman Sachs people from their own company, because that's what we're told to do, right? Is to like and engage with their own corporate content. So it's a good way to keep networking through a company by liking and engaging on the corporate posts. Is this going to guarantee you profile views? Not necessarily, because when you do that action, yes, someone has to do something up here in terms of reacting to it. But it's like when people say to you, well, you're never going to win the lottery. Well, you're not going to win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket. If I buy a ticket, at least I've got a better chance than you do, who's not buying the ticket. So that's how you got to consider looking at those profile view, following the company page, and then engaging with the corporate and company content. Starting a post, super straightforward. So if you've got Twitter, you can cross-post to Twitter. You can actually cross-post to anything that you want. I mean, I'm always as public as to I want to go. And then you've got different things that you can do with. So you can add a photo, you can add a video, you can add documents. Documents are great because they actually create long dwell time. So what a document looks like when it's been shared is that you can then scroll through it. So if I look at my this one here, so we're ticking over at 4,500 views, and then when I've loaded it, people will then scroll through it. So it's a great way to get people to stay on the post for an extended period of time, because they have to kind of read through and click through. So you can send a PowerPoint into a PDF and then add it as a document. This one here in terms of that same thing around relationship capital, get people to look at it and engage with that from that perspective. So that's what a document looks like when you post it. Video, if you're going to add video, you can add a max up to 10 minutes natively. So rules typically say your videos will need to be no more than 30 seconds, 30, 60, 90 seconds is where you want to be thinking, or actually go as close to 10 minutes as you can, provided the content is relevant. So if you can add the file up natively, that's probably the best way to go. Of course, if it's a long form video, if it's like more than 10 minutes, you can add a link or a snippet of that video. What I tend to do is kind of take a 15-second introduction to the video, put that there, then with the link to the YouTube channel to go, or the YouTube video to go and have a look at. Creating polls. Polls are useful because it's a great way to drive engagement. So you can add options, you can set the duration of that poll, and then it's a great way to start conversations, bring new people into conversation. And of course, you then get some analytics off the back of that. So that then enables you to then create some more content based on the content that you asked the question on. The key thing is to kind of mix it all up. I talked about third-party content. Third-party content is a great one, because if you've got your own corporate page, then typically any of these share buttons, you can click that share button, and then it will help you share the post directly on LinkedIn. But then also using third-party content. So this is an example of using content from the Lawyer magazine based on some research done by this gentleman called Simon. That's not mine, but I tag people. I make sure I'm referencing this isn't my content, but it's useful. I think this post is traveling at 15,000 views at the moment, and actually generated me 3 business conversations off the back of it, because what I was trying to do is get people's attention using this post by people I'm not connected to, which are some of the managing partners in this list. So by using useful content which is helpful to my intended audience, but then tagging some people, that then created the opportunity to create a business conversation. So around 80-90% of what I do on LinkedIn has got purpose and intent. I'm either trying to get someone's attention, a group of people's attention, the buying committee, company or particular industry in terms of a newsfeed. And that's where this becomes critical for your hashtags on your posts. So we talked about hashtags in terms of the newsfeed. So this is then actually where hashtags become critical in your social media posts. So if I look at this one here, which was around lately, we'll come to that in a second. So by adding these hashtags, so digital transformation, I'm now pulling my content into different news feeds. So that's how you can start to get visibility in different news feeds and different conversations. So move yourself out of that kind of restrictive just in your own news feed. Because as I said, when you share a piece of content on LinkedIn, so what I mean by that is when you start a post and share a piece of content, only 10% of your network will see it, because LinkedIn is deciding whether it's worthy to be pushed and made visible or not. So it kind of tests a small proportion first, seeing how they got on with that, and then pushes it further, and then pushes it a little bit further if the system, both human beings and people, think this is interesting. So what you can then do is by adding hashtags to your posts, and especially hashtags that have got high following. So ideally, you want to be looking for the big hashtags which have got high following. And recent research is showing those hashtags need to be in kind of north of a million. So if I look at marketing, that's got 20 million followers. So by mixing it up between the big conversations and the small conversations, you can then start to move yourself into that different areas, but more importantly, new eyeballs and new areas of conversation. So there's no the rule of engagement on hashtags is that typically it's between 3 and 9. I kind of hover between 5 and 6 hashtags per post to get that maximum kind of network effect where I can. But if you're not adding hashtags to your post, then you're massively hindering yourself in terms of giving you that wider reach that you can get into new conversations. The other thing that I always get asked around is premium, and premium is like anything in life. If you pay for it but don't use it, then it's an expensive waste of time. But actually, I think anybody who's on LinkedIn and taking LinkedIn seriously, especially from a commercial perspective, you're on here LinkedIn to make money, to drive business leads and business opportunities. My view is you should pay for it. The beauty with premium is then you get more insight and data, and this is where the world of intent data is critical, because there's no point getting really excited about having thousands of views on a post. So if I actually come back here and kind of show you this slide here, where this post is now at 15,000 views, but if all these companies were irrelevant, i.e. they weren't the types of companies that I'd want to sell or market to, these 15,000, these 10,000 views are a complete waste of time. They're completely pointless. Same here with the job titles. I don't really care about geography because I operate in a global market. But this is where with premium, you can then start to understand, is my content actually working? Is it landing where I want it to land? Are these the types of organizations that would buy my services? Because if they're not, then this is irrelevant. But if you understand that, you can then start to change it. You can start to do something about it. You can start to use this insight to behave differently, try some different tactics, different style of content, different hashtags, and so on. And then, of course, what you also get with premium is you then get profile views. So again, there's no point getting excited whether you get 500 profile views or 10,000 profile views. If the people that are looking at your profile are not relevant, are not people that will buy your services, then you can start to do something about it. And this changes every day. So I can then look through in terms of the different companies I'm looking at. So this is all good for me to know that these types of companies and these people in terms of job titles are looking at my profile. And if I see somebody that is of interest to me and I'm not connected to them, then I potentially would send them a connection request going, hey, I saw you look at my profile. You potentially signaled intent. I wouldn't say signal intent, but hope found everything you're looking for. Be happy to connect if you want to follow more of my content or something to that effect. I'm not pitching, but I'm using this as a way to make sure that I am landing where I want to land. So that's the other great thing with premium, is you get this, the ability to understand the network effect that you're having through your behavior on LinkedIn. The other thing to then consider is that your alarm bell is this becomes your best friend. So this is what you've got to keep an eye on is these triggers, because the more that you engage with content, the more that you start a conversation and react to people reacting, the more you start to move things around. So people thanking me here. This is Emmanuel tagging people in. So I've gone through and liking a comment. So I'll like that. I'll come back and reply. And of course, every time I'm doing that, you're triggering the system for it to think, hey, this might be more interesting content. I might want to push it further. So you can then use this just to keep an idea of to what's happening and what's going on. If someone comments on your post, the bare minimum you should do is like that comment, provided, of course, they're not trolling you, but you're unlikely going to see that. If someone asks you a question, respond to it. If someone kind of counters your viewpoint, then by all means, counter it back, have a conversation. The more that you drive that, every time you're doing that, you're triggering something in your network, and the network of the person that you've engaged with, and also anybody else that's engaged on this content. So you're kind of keeping people front of mind. It is okay to disagree with people on LinkedIn. That's absolutely fine. Not everybody has to agree with everything you say, as long as you keep it in a professional manner. I've generated business conversations through disagreeing with people. But I've done everything I say on social, I say in a face-to-face environment. So the alarm bell is where you can kind of keep up to speed with what's happening, and then make sure you react accordingly to do that. Just kind of another thing to consider around content is, here's the newsroom top right. So there's stuff happening that is relevant to you. So the airline industry, let's say you sell to the airline industry. So this is commentary on what's happening around BA. And you can see here, what they're doing is they're pulling out different people like you or me into this post here. So anybody can do this. Anybody can do this and have a conversation. So you can see here, this first officer at British Airways, they're pulling these people out, this aviation data systems expert. So what you can potentially do, you can either like or comment on this post, so then that'll give people more visibility. When they comment, they'll see you and see your name. You can potentially go and find the news editor. So Andrea, you can click on her profile and click unfollow. But if we're pulling out this, the first to be anyone, so any of these articles. So this is from the FT, so Paul Blenkinsop. So what I can also do, if I know that, and of course, the problem with the FT is that typically you have to pay for it, but I can then repurpose this. If I know that LinkedIn, so I'm just making an assumption I sell, the aviation industry is an industry that I operate in. So blah, 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 blah. Then I use the piece of content which we know that the LinkedIn editorial news team are looking at with the hashtags aviation, et cetera, share that. Then potentially you might get picked up by LinkedIn and pushed in here. And then what that looks like when that happens, this happened to an old colleague of mine earlier today, is that you get, so here Mark used to work at Mark, so Mark's post was featured by the LinkedIn team. So then your network will get a notification that you've been featured by the LinkedIn news team to start to drive you to it. So start to engage in commentary, engage in conversation on content that's outside of the corporate space, as in your corporate world, i.e. what you're being asked to share and comment on, but engage in the conversation that you want to be a part of and draw those people towards you. So the next iteration of all of this in terms of where this is going is what Forrester referred to as guided selling. And this is taking a leaf out of e-commerce's book and starting to understand how you can start to build data into this. Because the more data we can start to get, we can start to make better, faster business conversations. It can drive better content marketing. It can drive better everything. And back that Aldous Huxley quote around experience is how you interpret it. If you can start to create a better overall customer-client journey, customer-client experience, however you want to call it, the more powerful that becomes. So one example of this is using intent data at scale. So Bombora is a tool that I leverage the free version, Spikr, S-P-I-K-R. is another one where you can't unfortunately sign up for their free service, but I get an email every Monday, and I'm listening to these words, and then it tells me these organizations are looking and researching at scale what you do. So they're signaling intent by showing interest in terms of what they are they're doing. Kind of next iteration of all of this. So lately, we'll come to that in a second. Amazing tool, Answer the Public. Relationship science. You can start thinking about building relationship board level deep data into your CRM system. LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I'll do a separate one on this. Best lead generation tool in the market by a country mile. Outreach or Sales Loft in terms of sales engagement technology. Gong in terms of voice, recording voice conversations. Listening for tonality, looking for trends, looking for what the high-performing sales reps do or don't say, key points in client conversations, etc., etc. So what you want to start doing is then start looking at the wider kind of tech stack that you can get. So here's relationship science in terms of it builds out that kind of board level conversation. Answer the Public is an interesting one. So, for example, you can type in how people search things. So let's say venture capital. I then click search. And what this is now doing for the free tool is actually telling me how people are searching on social. So if I understand how people are searching on social, you can then start to create your written blogs around this. So So if you start to put this into your content, this will then potentially be picked up by search engines because this is what people are searching. So it tries to match what people are searching. So Answer the Public is a good one to look at. In terms of if you think this is all too much, then in terms of scheduling and getting your content to work much, much harder for you, automation in terms of automated outreach is not good in terms of automatic connecting. Scheduling tools, different kettle of fish. Scheduling tools frees up your time to spend time selling and doing. And this tool by Lately is a game changer. So you write a long form blog here. I want to make that work for me. So historically, what I would do is I would I've written 5 unique tweets and then a couple of social media posts and rotate those over a period of time. What Lately can do for you is it can then just do this at scale. So it then generates the social media posts for you automatically by passing all the text in your blog post. So this one written blog I can then turn into, I don't know, we'll see how many posts it generates for me, but saving time and effort. And then you can use its scheduling tool to allow either you just let it decide when to post based on what it's learned over time is the best time to post, or you can make that decision yourself across the different kind of social media platforms that you want. So here 42 social media posts have been generated. So that's 42 days, 42 weeks worth of content I can distribute across different things. You can then use the scheduling, use the picker, you can schedule what you want and so on. But the real game changer in this is that they also do video and audio, but I'll do a separate video on that. So what you need to consider in terms of what the art of the possible is, back to this guided selling piece, is around how do you use data and data points and rich data, so data that is up to date and current, which is all the things I've kind of shown you, and then tools to support your outreach, like Lately, to drive this further, to make better, faster, quicker decisions. And we're moving into the world of the CDP, so customer data platforms, which kind of sits on top of your CRM system, where you can start to pull this all into one place. Your marketing data, your sales data, your forecasting data, your finance data, your social data. And this then starts to really, really move the needle. And then you can start to layer the nefarious AI over this, but AI will start to become more predictive. It will start to help you understand the strength and relationship of your customers, who to contact, when to contact, and how. Because fundamentally what you're trying to do is this: you're trying to sell through your network, not to it. But social media is a living, breathing system. If you're sitting there passively, you're not actively out there versus the competition are, especially in this current climate where you can't meet people, you can't see people in the physical environment. You can be present, omnipresent in the market 24/7 should you choose to. And as Simon said from his Q3 report, this is not around about necessarily filling out a content calendar. It's around, how does you build this into your day-to-day? So focus on identifying and initiating conversations with the people that you matter about, rather than necessarily just broadcast content. However, you can have all the data systems in the world. You can have the best kind of technology platforms in the world to give you that guided data and that insight and that intent. You can have a great network, fully optimized profile. But if all boils down to this: if you're not building your content to focus religiously on your audience, to help them think differently, to this, as Chris says, to help them solve their business problems, then at the end of the day, we may as well give up and go home. Thanks for taking the time to watch that. I hope you found it useful and learned something new. If you want to learn more about how myself or the team can help you build this into your teams, please do get in touch, mention this. Otherwise, share it with your friends and colleagues that you think may find useful. But most importantly, good luck, and I wish you all the best.